leave. You
Welcome to Friday Live with Gladiator.
We're here. We did it again.
I'm Amy Bossy here with Rachel D'Souza. This is our second show ever. Yes, we have a great show, great conversation coming up. But first, Rachel, I thought we'd do something that we do a lot of times with our Gladiator team meetings. I hear some background.
It's my son.
Talking. Okay.
Yeah.
I hear a TV.
Hold, please. We're having technical difficulties. Can you take him off speaker, please? Thanks.
I don't know if we have.
That's great.
Right. So part of the reason we do check-ins is because I like real talk. And so first of all, we'll tell you that I am not in St. Louis today. I am in a hotel room in Minneapolis because I'm traveling with my kids this weekend.
Yeah.
So that is the first thing. But why do we do our check-in?
Yeah.
Back in 2019, I had the opportunity to travel to the Collective Impact Forum Summit and learned about this really awesome tool that they have. And really, it was meant to help teams be in better communication with each other, to bring their whole selves to work, whether we're feeling good or less than good. And so it really, I think, helps us be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more transparent with the people that we work with and we spend a lot of time with, so they can kind of know, where we're at and what might be helpful for us to be able to do our best work together.
This is like we planned this on purpose. This is really drawing back to what we talked about last week about bringing our whole selves in and being vulnerable. So we have a graphic. Thank you for sharing that. That's Sarah on the back end of things, Sarah Howard, our colleague. This is the tool that we use that Rachel's talking about. Rachel, do you want to demonstrate how we use this?
Yes. Okay. And again, shout out to the Collective Impact Forum for making this tool public. You can download it on their website. So I will tell you today, as I shared, I'm feeling green, first of all, because I have a weekend out of town with my kids. We're going to visit some family. We're going to meet a new baby, which is very exciting. We're going to get to see our St. Louis City soccer team play the Minnesota team. So feeling green. But I will also share, and again, because I'm a Gemini and many things can be true, that when I think about what's happening in the world, that I sort of co-opt this chart a little bit and I make purple, right? So when I think about some of the things that are happening in the country, people I care about, and causes that I care about, I do feel angry. I do feel sad. And so just hearing a lot of different things today. What about you?
Oh, well said, first of all. And I mean, like maybe ditto to some of the things. I'm orange yellow right now in St. Louis. We are experiencing a storm and it's so like windy and gross outside. And, you get the text alerts from the city.
I am getting the alerts.
So my husband's like, be prepared to get the cats and run to the basement. But it should be fine. But I'm also planning to go to an outdoor graduation tonight. And I'm like, are we going to be okay? And I'm sure we are. And then with the state of the world, I'm in the same boat as you are. And I remember back in COVID times, which seems like yesterday and also forever ago, how just getting things, specifically medications that we needed, was so hard. And I'm experiencing that now, but times a million. And that has taken so much of my time today and all week, and not only just this week, but for the past 3+ weeks. And still I'm no closer to solving my problem. And I'm very frustrated. So
That is really
little red.
exciting. And I'm glad it's the weekend and hopefully you have time to relax and feel balanced in other ways and hoping that whole situation works itself out.
I'm so sorry I keep looking, but I'm like listening for the tornado sirens.
No, I'm
fine. Not an alarmist, but
you're hilarious. No, my phone is like dinging with the weather notifications are happening in St. Louis. And also, again, I'm in a hotel room with 2 children, which might feel like a tornado warning or a thunderstorm warning. So let's move on because last week it was just me and you. And this week we have a guest.
I'm so excited.
I am so excited. So I am very excited to welcome our colleague, Diana Farias Heinrich, to our conversation today. She is the founder and CEO of Habra Marketing. And like Gladiator, her clients are in the nonprofit sector. She's doing work around strategies that she's gleaned over a decade in her business that provides communications and marketing support that really move the needle and shift things about what we're doing here in the nonprofit sector. So please join me in welcoming my colleague Diana into our conversation where it's not thunderstorming, hopefully in Southern California.
Nah, we're good here.
Well, thank goodness. Okay, so I hope that from backstage you were able to hear our check-in, and so would love for you, if you feel comfortable, to bring yourself into our conversation with your own check-in.
I'm like a green yellow.
Okay. You want to say anything more about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling like just chatting with you on this call and stuff, like that's making me feel like really positive. But I mentioned to you earlier, I was also kind of like rushing and like scarfing down a bell pepper, which happened to be yellow.
I love it.
Yeah.
Synergy.
So that's where I'm at. I'm a green yellow today for right now.
Beautiful. We'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, Diana, we're so glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. And the format for this is I'm just going to shoot some questions your way. So both you and Rachel, can we get started? Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So first question, how do you and Rachel know each other?
Well, Rachel and I met because Rachel was the panel moderator host for the RAISE conference in, where were we? Nashville.
We were in Nashville, and this was in 2023, right?
No, it was 2024.
No.
It was
just really.
Mm-hmm.
I was there in 2023.
No, you're right. What is time? Oh my gosh. That was just like what, 6 months ago, 7 months ago? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
September. So
yeah. It's been a minute. Okay.
It's been a minute. But that's where we met, and I started to get to know Rachel. I started to get to know her work, and then it's like literally, Rachel, like every time I feel like you and I are interacting, I am always learning something new from you.
Oh
like today with this little like check-in thing.
Oh.
We just got to meet in person at the CCF conference a couple of weeks ago. And that was amazing. And I got to hear you present. And like, I am just like so fired up about, getting to know you better and having you at the Ethical Nonprofit Summit coming up too. So.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And one of the reasons that I am glad that we're still in a relationship, and I say this all the time, y'all, when I had to go to Nashville for this trip, I was very grumpy. I had like all of these different competing priorities. If we had been doing the check-in, I would have been like, I am a shade of red that is not like visible to the human eye. Like that is how I am feeling right now. And then I remember when you reached out to me to ask me to consider speaking at the summit, I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't hate me. She doesn't think that I'm like a terrible person. Like,
not at all.
This is so wonderful. And then when you and I talked, you were like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. You're always where the other people are like thinking, things about your actions. And as it turns out, like, that's just not the vibe that we shared. So
well, like we sat down together. I remember we sat down together at like dinner, and like you were perfectly Rachel and sweet and yourself, even though you had a bunch of stuff going on, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So, Amy, are we talking about the summit?
We absolutely are, and I've got some tornado sirens going off. But
you do. I'm also getting the notifications.
Okay.
There are tornadoes on the ground in Missouri.
And there's a red box in the city there. Usually it's never, I'm trying to look for the rotation out my window. But tell us about this summit, June 4th through June 6th. Deanna, how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, but Amy, if you just like get up and run, like,
yeah, I'm gonna look out the window while you're chatting.
do what you have to do. Like, all I can think about is like, you know, earthquakes in California, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
bye.
We're gonna be great. This is what women do. We just make it work. So here we go.
All of the things. We handle weather, we handle children, we handle business.
We handle bell peppers.
Okay. So about the summit. So the Ethical Nonprofit Summit will be running for the second time, June 4th through 6th. It's a virtual conference.
Mm-hmm.
I ran it for the first time last year because I started my sort of speaking circuit career back at like towards the end of 2023. And I was doing these sessions on ethical storytelling in my EquiStory framework. And what I found after every single session is there was just all of these people who were asking like similar questions, who wanted to know more, who just wanted to go deeper into the work. But my session was like 1 out of 40, 50, however many, right? And then you have to choose tracks and you have to pick between, so you don't always get what you know, all the things that you want. And so I was like, you know what? I bet that I could create like a community of folks that want to talk about just this specific topic. Ethical storytelling, community-centric fundraising, assets-based language, like all of these topics that are like interrelated. And that so many of us are like, you know, like you, me, you know, Frank Velasquez Jr. and Maria, like we're out here when we're talking about it, but there isn't a space for all of us to come together. And that's what the Ethical Nonprofit Summit is. It's like the one conference where this is all we are talking about. You know, yes, fundraising is mixed in, communications is mixed in, marketing is mixed in, but it's through an ethical storytelling lens.
And I love it because I, you know, can look back at my nonprofit career over 20 years and look at these very specific things that I experienced as a baby fundraiser and either didn't know how to handle them or just didn't do a very good job of handling them. And there are definitely some things that I learned the hard way, right? That I went through experiences. And then, as you know, and part of what I'll share, you know, when I do have the opportunity to talk about my experience at the summit, is that sometimes nonprofits, I think, in the pursuit of doing good work and telling stories can cause harm. And they can cause harm to the very people, the very communities that they believe that they are supporting. And so I am definitely looking forward to, I think, let me see, my talk is really centered on upholding integrity and centering community in your development work. I think across the sector, we can often tokenize people or their stories. We can manipulate those stories to our nonprofit's advantage or for a specific purpose. And I don't know that if that really builds the culture that our donors want to be a part of or that our other community members want to be a part of. So I'm really excited to sort of talk about how, you know, nonprofits can talk about the communities they serve or the issues they're focused on from a place of strength, from a place of asset and from power. And that also when we try new things or we try different things, there might be a chance of failure. And like, we have to let ourselves learn and like talk about the failure. And, you know, just give ourselves a chance to be in community and do what's right, take the lead from. So yeah, definitely sort of want to hear a little bit about, you know, we both contributed to the ethical storytelling report that was released by Memory Facts, who was also on our One Cause panel that we did back at the
Chris Miano was on that.
Yeah. So you know, what does ethical storytelling mean to you in your work?
So to me, I consider myself like the publisher, right? I'm the one that hits the post button, the send button, you know, all of that sort of thing. And when I first started in this, I was the one who made the mistake and ended up hurting the very people that I had set out to help, because I put out all of this like personal information about them. In a domestic violence situation, they became a Google search away. And I know, as an advocate for survivors, huge no, right?
Yeah.
But there was a communication breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And had I known, I wouldn't have done it. Or might I have? Right? Because like there's like this pressure, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, like, we have these intentions to do good, and we're trying to do our jobs, but we're under a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we're, doing things that don't feel right, and yet we do them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like, ethical storytelling is about being in integrity with your work and the stories that you're telling. And so my goal as the publisher is always, I want this to be a story that this person and this community is proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are not 100% like, I'm going to go show this to my parents, or I'm going to show this to my kids, or whatever, then it's a story that I would not feel okay publishing.
Yeah.
And what, that's the ethical part of the storytelling is, is this going to be good for everyone involved, or am I, raising at somebody else's expense?
Yeah. When I was, when we were on that panel, I think I shared a story of, my first fundraising job. We had the opportunity to share the story of a client and how, what her interaction with the organization looked like, what kinds of services received. And she consented to being a part of this publication.
Mm-hmm.
But we, the development and communications team didn't actually tell her how the story was going to be used. So she read it and she loved it. She was like, yeah, great. This is beautiful. Well, we then put it in our newsletter, which we sent out to 100,000 people or so, including people in her faith community, including people in her professional community. And all of a sudden she was like, oh no, I can't have this out there. Like, there are really personal, private details about my life that like I haven't shared in these spaces. And like, now all these people know.
Mm-hmm.
It was heartbreaking. I remember I shared an office with a few other folks on like the development and marketing team, and our comms person was just a basket case because she thought she had done everything correct, right? She had followed the processes that we had, and even still, we missed the mark on being transparent about how that story was going to be used and who might be on a mailing list or things like that. And to your point, like, I think nonprofits often find themselves in the space of having a really great opportunity to educate, having a really great opportunity to do like mission-driven communication, and despite our best intentions, can trip over ourselves, trip over our own feet, and hurt people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like to think of ethical storytelling as a journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are at the beginning and we're just learning about this for the first time, and we may or may not have made mistakes already. Mm-hmm. Some of us are, we are practicing these things, these methods, like getting informed consent and using stakeholder tests and all of these different tools, right, that we're going to talk about at the summit. But, so we're a little bit further along in our journey. But really, that's what the summit space is about. It's about all of us coming together and learning from one another, admitting mistakes, and knowing that as long as we acknowledge them and we've got tools, then we can do better. I'm not saying that none of us are going to ever make mistakes.
Oh, no.
Because I have since made mistakes as well.
Of course.
We've got to learn from them and, tweak and change the process, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And I mean, I think that's a good point. In our sector, there's some scarcity, right? We do have a fear of failure because in some ways the system sort of tells us, like, if you fail, you might lose your funding, or you might lose the people, or you might, and so I think there's a lot of tension for nonprofit professionals, especially those who are early in their career, to be able to do really wonderful work, but also be able to do it to your point, with that lens of transparency, and that if and when we make a mistake, that we talk about it and that we address it and that we, find ways to not repeat that harm, I suppose.
And find ways to repair it as well,
Find
right?
ways to repair
if we did make a mistake, how do we repair this?
Absolutely.
Right? At the time back then, I did not know how to repair it other than to like go back and sit at my computer and take down whatever I could find. But especially now, like once something's out there, it's out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is another piece of it, right? So my son, he's 14 now, but about a year ago, he's like, oh, I want to be on Instagram. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. But then he's on my Instagram page and looking at these pictures that I've posted of him from when he was an infant, and is like, okay, like my whole life story is on your, and at the time I'm like, here are my kids. They're so cute. They're wonderful. And now everyone should be of autonomy of an age of consent, right? But now they are aware. And so I have to say, okay, can I take a selfie? And when I take the selfie, can you look at it? Can I post it? Right? It is even happening, right? I just think technology has shifted so fast that there are new considerations that we might not have had to use or think about. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I literally just posted a video about this on LinkedIn.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, about kids and have you heard of sharenting?
No. Oh gosh, but it's probably something that I do.
It's like it's typically attributed to like influencers that are
got it.
all about their kids
and
their lives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there was like a video on it, and it's kids that are telling their parents, why are you sharing all this stuff about me, right? I did it too. I created my son's Instagram page.
Oh, did you really?
I set it to private, and I was posting there for like a little bit, and it was like friends and family, right? Very checked off. And then I'm like, why? And then even on my page, I'm like going through and I'm like, why, when I'm not on Instagram really? Why am I putting these things out there about him? Like even in my work, sometimes I tell a story about my son, but I don't really like having his picture out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different. And like I said, I do ask the kids oh, can I do this? Can I do that? And they tell me no. There have been times where they're like, Mom, please don't post that. And I'm like, no, you're right. I'm not going to post that. Or they'll be like, you can post it, but don't tag me in it. There have been a couple of times where I'll, post some cute pictures and I'll tag the kids' school in it. And then the kids' school has shared those pictures to their feed. And I'm like, okay, now I'm embarrassing you, right? Now you have that parent shame. So.
Well, you know what? That's the thing. And I think that that's what we're all learning to navigate, as moms, right? As professionals that are professionally sharing stories about other people. And so a lot of times people will ask me how can I make the donors understand why we're not maybe posting people's real pictures or sharing their real names? And I'm like, frame it as how would you like this posted about you, right? Let's apply the golden rule here about this. And I think that we can all agree that privacy is very important to all of us. And if we kind of frame it that way, then it becomes a lot easier to educate and show people why it matters that, maybe we might use composite stories. Maybe we might use stock photography or, AI generated images.
Yeah.
As long as we're transparent about it, right?
I think that's it, right? I think I talk a lot about learning and unlearning. We need to be able to provide information to people to understand and to change sometimes their expectations. What we have done in the past might have worked then. It might not have been right then, but maybe it worked for us. And now we're going to try something different. And it's with those values and the intention of being in community, right? And not tokenizing. Yeah. So I know we only have a few minutes left, but one of the things that I have been thinking a lot about, Gladiator's turning 10 this summer.
Congratulations!
Really awesome milestone. And so one of the questions on my mind, especially for women of color who are entrepreneurs, how has your experience of being a woman of color, like in the world, in California, in the US, like how does that impact or shape how you've decided to lead your business and do this work? And even did your identities or experience, influence you to launch the summit?
Actually, it's funny because when I launched my business, so it's been like it'll be 4 years in September.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I decided very early on is I'm going to lead with my full identity, because as a professional working in-house, I was very much like, code switching.
Yeah.
And there was a point where my supervisor at the time said, like, oh, I forgot you spoke Spanish. And I was like, have I really pushed my identity down that far? So with everything, like I always make sure Farias, my middle name, which was my maiden last name, is always present.
Yeah.
I sign off all of my email newsletters with hasta pronto, right? I, bring in aspects of my personality that are me. And I decided that early on, I'm not going to change who I am to try. I'm like, I get to build something. Why would I build something that I don't fit into?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so yeah, definitely, being a woman of color, a first generation, like daughter of Mexican immigrants, like I'm going to lead with that, because at the end of the day, that's why I'm building my business, is to support my family and my community and people who've had similar experiences to mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, not only does it have an impact on me, your peer, right, the other communities and nonprofits that you're working with, but the people that come after us. That's what I continue to think about. And, I think as a woman of color entrepreneur in a space, in a proximate community, at least, that was predominantly white led, other consultancies, wanted to distinguish myself from some of that culture, like wanted to be a little bit different. And for me, part of the journey included having my daughter with me. I started Gladiator when she was 7 weeks old. At the time, my spouse had been traveling, and I had a 4-year-old. So if you wanted Rachel to write a grant or talk to you about an event, she might have a baby strapped to her chest while it was happening. And for the first 18 months that I did this work, my daughter was with me most of the time. She was coming to the board meetings. She was there. And one thing I did learn is that when I made the decision to show up authentically in my work, it gave other people permission to show up authentically. And so then all of a sudden, I'd be talking to a prospective client, or I'd be meeting with a funder, and I'd be like, hey, can we meet at the playground after school today? And they're like, yeah. Can I bring my kid? And I'm like, yeah, that'll be great for both of us. And it's like, there are all these things we could do to like make people feel more seen and to make our work more joyful. Like, why not show up fully, right? Like,
sometimes that in and of itself is the balance, right? Of like, I'm going to meet with the funder at the playground with my kid, and they're going to bring their kids. And that's the balance of the day, right? Like balance is not about keeping everything like in containers and trying to make them weigh equally. No, it's like, bringing it all together in a way that works.
Yeah, that works. That's it, right? And that we actually don't have to contort and fit ourselves or have people not know we speak Spanish, right? Like because of where we find ourselves. But our favorite timekeeper, Sarah, has joined us, which means that we're getting close to the end.
I am so sad to end this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've been listening, and I stopped looking at the clock, and all of a sudden I realized, oh shoot, we're about to run over, and I want to be respectful of your time, obviously, Deanna, and just say thank you so much for joining this conversation and for rolling with a little bit of weather situation here in St. Louis. Amy is she's sheltering in her basement. I'm fine. I live not incredibly far from her, but the sirens are not going off where I am. And they've definitely gotten better at the technology and sort of pinpointing where they need to send them. So everything's fine here. And actually it feels like most of the weather is moved out. But Deanna, thank you so much for joining us. I want to make sure folks know that if they want to learn more about Deanna and the work that she does at Abra, the accent is on the second one, right? Abra Marketing, that they can go to abramarketing.com. And of course, you can always find more about Gladiator at gladiatorrds.com, which is the Gladiator website. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about the Ethical Nonprofit Summit, we urge you to get your tickets, register. It's really going to be a fantastic few days. And we have links for registration and for tickets on all of the Gladiator social media pages. So our Instagram page, at consulting.gladiator, and our LinkedIn page. So check it out and sign up. Don't miss it. And the last thing I want to do is just remind folks to join us next week. This will be a weekly occasion. Rachel, do you want to talk about what you're going to do next week?
Oh, yeah. So I will be chatting with our colleague, Fabra Jabulani, who currently works at Forward Through Ferguson, the organization that was formed after the murder of Mike Brown Jr. in Ferguson, Missouri. And we're going to talk about what it means to be a truly community-centered nonprofit organization. And, you know, we just had the 10-year anniversary of Mike Brown's murder in St. Louis last year. The organization will be celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. And so part of that is also talking about the journey of what it means to bring people along in, you know, equity-centered change. So we like to have big conversations in 30 minutes, no big deal. But that's who we are at Gladiator. We tackle things bite by bite. So we will be back here next Friday at 2:30 Central.
I can't wait. I want to be there.
Yeah, join us. Yay. Beautiful. Wonderful. Sarah, anything else? All right.
Sorry about that. No,
That's
I
okay.
think we're good. So join us next week.
Happy Friday. See you soon, Deanna.
Happy Friday. Bye.
Bye.